Hello and welcome. If you are new to this channel, welcome back if you're returning. I just had an incredibly fun interview with Barbara Williams. She's a business coach actually, but she is someone that has been diagnosed with CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And so we talk a bit about that. She co-founded the CIRS group with JC, who I interviewed earlier this year. So if you saw that, and Barbara is the other co-founder, and she's also a carnivore. So we talk a little bit about being carnivore and how that helped. And then also, just some of the things that she's tried, that I've tried, in the name of trying to be healthy. We talk a little bit about trauma and how that's all connected to all of these health things that we have going on, and just really talked about her journey. And she's just delightful. I absolutely love talking to her. So I hope that you enjoy this video. If you do like it, please, hit the thumbs up, like button, leave us comments, share it with somebody that you think it might be helpful for them. You think they might have some chronic inflammatory issues going on, and that might be helpful for them. So I think that is about it. So thanks for being here and happy healing. Well, I'm just excited. Thank you, Barbara, for taking the time to talk to me, because I just wanted to get to meet you too, because I think that we have some things in common and could talk about. And I want people to know about CIRS too. So I think that you have more to share than just about CIRS, but I think that we can get to that.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you're like a holistic therapist, right? I mean, that's the title or the the role.
I don't even know what to call myself anymore. We were talking about this today on a call, because I do so much more like quantum coaching now, and the quantum health stuff is so much fun for me. So nutritional therapy, I'm sort of moved into nutritional therapy and quantum health coaching now.
Yeah. But the fact that you recognize that like all of it's connected, any trauma, your mind, your body, all of it, like, it's just, to me, it's so rare to find a practitioner who understands that connection. I mean, obviously no one in the conventional world of healthcare even asks about any of that stuff. They don't even ask about diet. Like my GI doctor didn't even ask me what I was eating when I was diagnosed with SIBO, for example. So I'm just glad I'm glad people like you exist.
That would be the first thing somebody would ask you if you're diagnosed with SIBO, right?
Yeah.
Which is just...
And I asked her, I was like, don't you want to know what my diet is? She's like, no, that doesn't matter. Like, she told me that. I was like, well, I'm not coming back to you.
I know, right?
But anyway.
Those doctor's appointments where they're like, well, you really need to be on a statin because your cholesterol is high. I'm like, look at me. I am super fit. I feel fantastic. You're not asking me any of that. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, all I could think is find a different doctor.
Absolutely. That's what I think too, when that happens. No way.
Yes. Yeah. So I think just treating people holistically, because you kind of never know. And I don't think people understand. I think people underestimate trauma and what's the impact of trauma. And so at least to be trauma informed, if you're a healthcare person, if not trauma competent, at least understanding, come from a trauma informed perspective.
Yeah. Just have a little bit of awareness. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. All right. So I'm trying to figure out where would be the best place to start with your health journey, and your healing.
Well, I guess it started at the end of 2020 is when I had kind of gotten sick of my constant GI issues and just like pain, fun bathroom stuff, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know when exactly it started, but based on my timeline, I'm guessing probably at least since 2016. So about at least for those 4 years, 5 years or whatever. So end of 2020 is when I started like kind of investigating it. And that's when I went to that GI doctor and got tested for SIBO. That was when I gave her my symptoms, she said, let's test you for SIBO. I think I got tested for a few other things like H. pylori, which came back negative actually, and a couple other things. The reason that that's surprising is I got tested again through a stool test this year, and it came back positive for H. pylori and candida. So lots of fun stuff going on there. But in around September 2020 is when I was officially diagnosed with SIBO. And, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The fun part about SIBO is that really it's one of those things that you get diagnosed with that's describing your symptoms. It's not actually like a real diagnosis. It's not like, oh, and here's how you fix it. Sure, they'll give you antibiotics or they'll, you know, whatever. Even a holistic doctor that I saw a couple months later gave me herbal antibiotics, you know, which a lot of people use and some people have some success with, but there's like a 50% chance that you'll have it again because it's like a motility issue or something. There's some reason behind why bacteria is overgrowing in your small intestine when it shouldn't be. So yeah, so that was all frustrating to me. And around that time, I started doing research, listening to podcasts. I had heard about carnivore when Jordan Peterson went on Rogan. That was the first time I understood that it existed. So when I was doing my research and like looking up, you know, Weston A. Price and low FODMAP and AIP low FODMAP or whatever, all these different, the whole alphabet of ways of eating to help SIBO, I realized that carnivore fit all of those possible options. It just was less food, less different types of food. And so I went with it for the simplicity of it. And so I started carnivore January 2021 and have been carnivore ever since. So I guess from there, you know, I experienced a lot of the benefits that people experience generally with carnivore, the good, you know, better energy, better sleep, better skin. You know, people noticed that I looked better, looked healthier. I lost like probably 15 pounds of like just like water weight, inflammation, you know, especially around my face, you could tell. But I continued to have GI issues, and I continued to have them at the 6-month mark and the 12-month mark. And it's like, okay, what the heck? Like I've been eating pretty well. You know, I'll do a little cheat here and there, like the equivalent of like a donut, you know, every month or something like that. But otherwise I was very strict. And that's when I dug deeper and I worked with a carnivore nutritionist, Judy Cho, and she suggested CIRS, which I know is similar to JC's story, Lady Carnivore. So yeah, that's like the last, you know, what, 2-3 years of this process for me.
And for CIRS, it's chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So I'm sure that will be in the title something, but people might be going, wait, I think most people that are kind of curious are just trying to figure out their symptoms that aren't going away. I feel like I'm eating really well. When people have found a diet that works really well for them and lots of things are healing, but you still have some kind of annoying thing. And so it's interesting that yours was mostly GI stuff, because I probably would have thought maybe mast cell kind of activation, because they all kind of look similar. And you know, I don't know. So how did you decide
those can be related. And I am, some of the medications I'm working with, my CIRS practitioner specifically is actually specializes in mast cell activation stuff as well. So that works. And I didn't pick that on purpose. Like I didn't realize that connection like you just did until after the fact. But yeah, I am on some what do you call it? Like supportive therapies in addition to the regular Shoemaker protocol to kind of help with that. And I didn't notice anything specific. Like I didn't get like necessarily a histamine reaction with certain meats or, you know, I wasn't sensitive in that way. But then I thought about it. And like when I go out in the sun, I'll get kind of like a little bit of like a weird rash, not like just mottled skin, like different, like it just doesn't look right. And then it goes away pretty quickly. So I didn't think anything of it, but little things like that came up and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's proof that my bucket of toxins is full, basically.
Yeah. So when you before you started the shoemaker protocol, like, were you sort of swimming, just doing your own research, kind of trying to figure out what in the world, where to start?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was doing that whole first year of doing carnivore, I was I was following a few different influencers and their way of doing things. And unfortunately, my general warning is if somebody says, do it this way, it will definitely work for you. That's a red flag. And I learned that the hard way. But yeah, so I did the all beef, beef only, meat,
sure.
just beef, salt, water. I tried
Lion
that for
diet.
a bit.
Yep.
Lion diet. Carnivoring harder, like, oh, that donut I'm having once a month is causing all the problems, so I'll cut that. Oh, I'll cut coffee. I'll, on and on. So I just kind of kept getting stricter and stricter. And then of course I would kind of get burnt out on that, and I'd swing the other way and then eat all the different meats and all the dairy, and dairy wasn't agreeing with me much at the time. So
yeah, probably not with bacterial overgrowth in your small intestines. That's
exactly.
probably gonna irritate. Yeah.
Right. So it was a lot, and so I was doing a lot on my own, and really, like, I had just kind of said out loud on my Instagram, like, I'm still dealing with GI issues, so look at all these supplements I'm trying now. And I took a picture of a bunch of supplements, and Judy saw it and was like, oh my God, Barbara, call me, or like message me. And so that's where, because and that's a big message that she's been delivering too, is like, if you're on carnivore and your health issues that you came to carnivore for have not resolved in like 6 months to a year, I mean, as long as you want to wait, I guess, but there's probably something that's underlying that you need to dig deeper and like actually heal. That carnivore itself. And I think carnivore is amazing as a foundation. I think generally speaking, it's a fantastic way of eating for most people, if I had to guess. But the people who are like really sick, and it's just so many of carnivores are, because it's like, who the heck would go to such an extreme way of eating unless they were really not feeling great? Right. It's rarely those like biohacker, muscle dude, whatever, Saladino types that are doing carnivore just for fun or to be cool, like Rogan. Like, most of the time people doing carnivore are either sick mentally, like food addicted, or exactly, or then and of course that's all tied to trauma, as we know, and then or it's like a chronic illness, which can also be tied to trauma. So there's all of that.
It can all be tied to trauma, and it also can all come back to bacteria, which is interesting, because the imbalances in our gut, what we would probably call dysbiosis, this just, it's not harmonious. Not that I used to think balance, like it all needed to be good bacteria and the opportunistic bacteria needed to be like even. And I don't even think it's supposed to be even. I just think it's supposed to be where it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to be harmonious. Because in nature, plants can borrow nutrients from other plants. And I think that's what happens in our gut bacteria and the microbes in general, but mostly the bacteria. I think they can borrow things from each other, and they are supposed to. But when it gets out of whack, and I think our nervous system, the way that we're brought up can have a big influence, whatever the environment was like, physically what it was like, but also emotionally and mentally, those kinds of things can impact that. Even the way we came into the world can influence all these things. So and by the time we get into our late 20s, early 30s, and we're feeling not good still. And when you're eating really well, that's so frustrating. I mean, were you frustrated?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, like, I'm doing all this work. I'm eating really well, exercising, like, and I still am tired all the time. I'm stressed. I'm, have the GI issues almost every day. Like, it's just like, you get frustrated. Like, what the heck is the point? Like, maybe I will just eat a friggin' slice of cake right now, because I'll hurt anyway. Might as well. So I had my moments where I was definitely irritated at the whole thing.
Yeah, but you kept going.
I did keep going. Well, because like I still feel better. overall with carnivore. Like there's, and it's hard to describe unless you've experienced it. So, but anyone who hasn't tried carnivore, like give it 30 to 90 days. And you'll know what I mean. Like you just feel better with all that crap out of your system. You think more clearly, all the symptoms of SIRS do get a little bit better when you are carnivore. And I would even say, like, there's no long-term research on this yet, but I do think that's being looked at, is that if you are carnivore and then you start to treat SIRS, you actually fare better through the treatment because your fats are up, your cholesterol's up, like all the things that you need in order to deal with the binders and all of that protect you. Exactly. So yeah, so it's still worth doing carnivore. Absolutely. And I would say even after I heal, I plan on being very, very meat-based, if not full carnivore. Like I don't have any pull towards like veggies. People always ask me like, wow, you don't miss vegetables? Like, no, dude, I miss donuts. Like, yeah. I know those are terrible. I'm like, some people would say they're poison, and sure it is, but it's delicious poison. But
well, and some would say pick your poison. I mean,
exactly.
Like, you're like, no, I'm not missing the kale, people. No. I'm just trying to choke that shit down for like
for years. I was vegan at one point in my life. No, I used to be a big kale supporter. So and that was rough.
Well, no offense to the kale lovers.
No offense, of course.
No, I mean, I think we have to keep trying all these different things.
And everyone is different, and everybody needs to figure out what works for them. That's why, and if an influencer says you have to do this, run. It
doesn't even make sense. I mean,
it doesn't.
We have our our gut is as unique to us as our fingerprint. So I don't think that's by accident. I think, and I do. So I've been trying, I'm not a dogma. I love carnivore. It's my safe. I can always go back, and I've done all beef. I've done all, and for me, if you're unable to tolerate certain things, like if you decided you wanted to have something and you just got a rash or itchy or whatever, nose starts running, GI stuff, brain fog, all the things, then that's not quite right. Like some things you still need healing, because my belief is we could have whatever. You could eat whatever and not have an issue, and pick and choose is my hope. But I'm also, I deal with addiction. So it's a little trickier when you're trying to figure out, you don't want to start a spiral. And so for me, carnivore is very safe. It's my safe place. Like when I feel like I'm moving in unsafe territory with food, I go back and just get strict carnivore and then try again. Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Right.
It's just a constant, it's a struggle. And like next year might be different than this year. And you work through stuff and you process things. But yeah, I agree. Carnivore is a very safe place to be. And also I remember Dr. Natasha
Campbell McBride.
Campbell McBride, thank you. With her GAPS diet, she mentioned in an interview where she thinks like you need to heal, and then you can go to that social event and eat whatever's being provided and go home and you're fine. But you go back to eating well. You don't just, get derailed. And that's like what you were touching on. But like we should be able to tolerate that. That's a sign of health, that you can eat some garbage or something that's just not ideal, and then go back to your ideal way of eating and be fine. But I'm not there yet.
I do love Dr. Natasha.
Yeah, she's great.
And some people call her dogmatic, and I'm like, no, she's just truthful. Like she's telling you like it is.
Yeah, exactly. And she came up with a system, and you can kind of tweak it. It definitely goes by like how, what you want to do, or how you feel as you go through it. It's their guidelines that she provides.
Right. And I think when you find a way of healing, whatever. And we can talk about more ways of healing that you've tried just besides diet, and even getting on Shoemaker's protocol and all of that. But all the things that we do to contribute to our healing, I think then when we run into viruses or mold or things that are in our environment, I keep I joke about the zombies taking over, but I mean, at some point we may need to be able to eat whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, who knows what the world is going to be like. So in order to tolerate that, we have to do all of our own healing so that when we run into whatever, we don't fall apart.
Absolutely.
And are inflamed messes that can't think.
And we need to be resilient. Exactly,
resilient. So what are some of the other things? Because I know when you mentioned The Body Keeps the Score, I'm like, yeah, the best reading, one of my favorite books ever.
Yeah.
And so just the nervous system, like really doing things to help the nervous system while you're healing, whatever your way of healing is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've been, I've dabbled in different, mostly just talk therapy, most of my adult life. I did suffer through some childhood trauma. And so that, that ended up causing me to want to seek out the, therapy. Now, the problem with just plain talk therapy is like, I can think about it logically up here in my brain all day long. And I understand that, oh, that was then, this is now, fine. Yeah. But when a trigger happens, my body doesn't recognize it as that was then, this is now. It's, oh my God, it's happening again, And so my heart starts racing, I'll cry, like a whole thing. And so I have found, thankfully, through CIRS, I didn't know about the Body Keeps the Score book until CIRS, because it's so hand in hand, recommended within the mold community or the CIRS community.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
I know, me too. And now I recommend it and talk about it whenever I can, because I just think it's such an important book. But it's heavy. It talks mostly about it's all PTSD, and it's like war veterans straight to childhood molestation cases. Like it's a rough read. However, by the end of the book, you do get real actionable types of therapies to try. So what I did was I actually went to the author, Bessel van der Kolk. I went to his website for his trauma. I forget what it's called. Like it's like a trauma center. His trauma center.
Yeah.
So he has actually a directory of therapists that is in there. So I found my therapist through that, and she's fantastic, completely understands the mind-body connection in a way that no therapist I have ever worked with has ever acknowledged. Again, it's funny, we talked about like conventional like healthcare doctors are so in the body, and then conventional therapists are so in the mind, but it's like so rare to, like someone like you, someone who recognizes that there's a connection. Is incredibly rare and so valuable. So she does. And so when we do talk through things, she'll turn it into a physical thing. Okay, where do you feel that? Let's breathe through it. Let's get you grounded. Let's, she'll walk me through the process of basically how to help myself when those triggers come along, so that the next time they do, I can guide myself through it. And then also hopefully over time and with more practice, that becomes less and less and less. So that has been a huge part. My friends think I might be a little bit crazy for going through that kind of, it's been really rough therapy, like just crying and just painful every week. But I felt like it was very necessary for me to tackle that, at least as much as I had the strength to, while also going through this mold treatment protocol to kind of attack from both sides. Because again, they're so connected.
Yeah. And I think anything you can do that helps your nervous system, retrains your nervous system, because those of us who have trauma in our childhood, we're already wired for kind of hypervigilance and for, so the things that can trigger us, it can be very, it doesn't have to be something that you're like, oh, that of course is triggering. It can be, really anything.
Yeah.
So I think, the more you can retrain your nervous system, and to have a good therapist that can companion you there, like even, whatever modalities, talk or whatever, but yes, it's in the body. And it's stored in the body, these experiences. Right. And so just talking isn't going, you're right. And I just did a podcast with my friend Jen Finch, we were just talking about the difference in becoming like mindfulness and aware. And
Yeah.
it's great to become more aware, but that's a left brain,
Yeah.
or right brain, or whatever. But you have to get in the body. Like you've got
Yes.
to come back to the body. So it's more somatic.
Right.
And so the breath and the body work,
Hmm.
whatever that looks like for people, it's
Right.
just really important. So how did you figure out the mold protocol? I mean, did you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean that, yeah, that's a whole other, I mean, so I was like,
Yeah.
so I took, so what I did, so when I approached Judy and I told her, and, we talked and she was like, okay, you're having GI issues. I think you're going to need to do a stool test.
Yeah.
I was not excited about that because you're pooping in a tray. For anybody who
Yeah.
hasn't done a stool test, I like, it's
You're
like,
scooping the poop
yeah,
yourself. Yeah.
exactly. It is so weird. Yeah. So that was an experience, but I'm glad I did it. It gave me data, which I love. So, and that's what I had mentioned before. I came back positive for H. pylori, Candida, staph, and I guess that was it. So those three. And Judy said, well, staph is very specifically usually in people with SIRS. You actually have it's the Marcon's test for your nose.
For the
So
nose.
like, yeah, so then she was like, well, you should test for Marcon's, but also I think you have SIRS. So like, here's that test. And it's like, oh, cool, more money to spend.
Right. Right.
But but I did do the vision test, which is like free or $15 online. And that indicated SIRS as well. I did not pass. And then also, of course, I had, I think, 8 or 9 of the symptom clusters. So there's like 13 that are possible for SIRS. And that's one of the issues I would say is like, because you had JC on, Lady Carnivore, and she had symptoms like, I mean, she's walking with a cane, she had joint pain,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
severe, no GI issues, none.
No.
And then I mean, I guess I had some like knee inflammation a little bit, but other than that, I don't have any joint issues at all. It's all GI. We just like, and also my case is way less severe than hers. Like she said, she was walking with a cane, like her life was very affected. And for me, it was like, okay, I don't read books anymore because the act of reading is like too much, too difficult. That it wasn't like it really like hurting my life the way it was hurting hers. So I guess I'm only bringing this up to illustrate the fact that it really affects people very differently.
Yes.
Which is weird.
It is weird. Well, that makes it just tricky to diagnose. And then and it's one of those things where you've got these symptoms and we keep going to the same kinds of doctors. Even then, you go to the thing that makes the most sense, go to a gastroenterologist. So you're going to the GI doc. That's not super helpful. So then you try some functional or maybe a naturopath or whatever. And here you are just supplementing around and not really ever understanding the root. So then at some point you figured out that.
So that's, so exactly. So then once it was like staph, and I can see in hindsight, I see where Judy was like, oh, she has SIRS, like 100%. Like I get that now. But at the time I was like, okay, I have staph, H. pylori, and Candida. That sucks. Like that sounds like it's not going to be fun to heal.
But it also sounds like a real, like, yes, of course I have GI issues. I've got all this stuff going on in my gut. Okay.
Exactly. I thankfully, because some people, when they get results like that, they get very like, oh man, like just they get sad about it and they think, oh my God, this is now a mountain to climb. For me, thankfully, when I got that, I was like, okay, that explains it. Exactly what you just said. Like, oh, of course. Thank God I have this, because it would be weird if I didn't.
Right.
Yeah. So at that point, I failed the vision test, and that has a pretty decent accuracy to determine SIRS. So I felt comfortable moving forward with the SIRS test at that time. So I did, and sure enough, I have the genetic haplotype. There's a few different ones that you can have. Mine is the multi-susceptibility one, same as JC actually. So it could be from anything from a tick bite and Lyme disease, or algae, or mold. I believe mine was mold because in 2016, I bartended for about 9 months in a very, very old building, like from the 80s, that smelled. There was a brewery in there. It was very dark. and I was working there like 5 days a week for 9 months. So I'm thinking that is probably where a lot of my exposure came from, if I had to guess. But other than that, I don't have any obvious history of like, oh, a flood in the house, or, anything that was very specific like that. So from there, once I had the diagnosis in about April of this year, 2022, that's when I was like, okay, well, it's time for me to find a doctor and start this path and start saving my money and, all that stuff to start going through this. So I went to, I went, Judy has some doctors that she works with that she recommends. So that's how I picked mine. But there are doctors listed on Dr. Richie Shoemaker's website, survivingmold.com. Right. So that's right. All the practitioners that are available that are certified are there, and they're mostly in the United States. I think there's like 1 or 2 that are in Canada. But that's where I went. So I went that direction, and I've been working with a doctor since about June or July of this year. And so I've been on the protocol for that long.
Okay, so not terribly long. What are we in? December?
Yeah, December.
So yeah. So how are you feeling? Because it looks like you're feeling really good from social media.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good. I noticed the biggest improvement in the first 2 months for me. And that's not always typical. So I want to like warn people, because some people may be on the binders for 3, 4, even 6 months, and it takes that long to start feeling better. Again, I have a pretty mild case in the scheme of things. So after about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, I think being on the binders, I went from, at first feeling very, very tired, like just like could not keep my eyes open, kind of tired on the binders. And then by the time I got to the full dose and I was on that for a bit at that like 2-month mark, I felt a lot better. Still having GI issues, but
okay.
but like I noticed a big difference in fatigue. I thought Carnivore solved my fatigue. It did not. Apparently it helped quite a bit, but I definitely got a lot better with fatigue. I've been reading books like crazy. That's been a huge difference. I'm like almost through the Harry Potter series. That's my like fun books. I've never read them before. So I finally am doing that. But I'm reading books on, on coaching, on business, on CIRS, on, health. Like I'm able to like process this information where I could not have done that before. So there's definite huge improvements on that level, just like cognition and ability to process information, assimilate all of that.
Because I hear that a lot. The static shock. So that's one that people are like, oh, that's a weird, like you're just overly getting shocked every time you touch anything. So that can be a sign, but also that not being able to assimilate new information.
Yes.
And having to been able to do that prior to, so that's not, and it's kind of new that you're not being able to process. Cause I hear that a lot, now it's hard to figure out what's kind of like post-COVID stuff.
Sure.
What's happening with people. Cause I think mast cell activation too, all of that is tied up together. Right. And so these symptoms sometimes can look, you can have the symptoms and not know what the deal is, but I think that's really important too, because you probably do have chronic inflammation. Right. If you are having trouble assimilating new information and a brain fog and all of that. So how you approach it, you may not immediately think SIRS, but at least start working on your inflammation and trying to get that down.
Yeah. And that is something my SIRS practitioner has mentioned to me, is getting the inflammation down is fighting the illness. Like that, it's in one of the same. It's not like taking Tylenol and masking the pain. It's not like that. It's actually bringing the inflammation down is
the treatment.
It is the treatment.
You have to do to get.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, because I'm just thinking about some things from a quantum perspective too that help reduce inflammation, because you're helping the mitochondria do what it needs to do, which is where inflammation. So dysfunctional mitochondria drives inflammation. It's literally lost electrons. So if we're not putting electrons back in and we're not helping our mitochondria, it's going to be this wheel of like So if you're still in the environment, like I think that's a big issue too for people
It
who
is.
I would not recommend that you go through like shoemakers if you're still in the environment. There are other things you probably need to do before, right?
Right. Yeah, and there's a couple blood markers, like when you do the blood
Uh-huh.
test to determine that you even have SIRS, there's a couple of the blood markers that can indicate you are in current exposure. So that's one
That's
thing.
good.
Yeah, that helps. And then that can also lead you to whether or not you should test your home. I think most people probably should. It's not the most expensive thing in the world. It's like it's either 150 or 250 depending on what how much testing you want done. Just to like get a feel for what your at least the environment you live. And then if you work somewhere outside the home, that's probably good to test that place too.
Mm-hmm.
So those things are important. You're right. I mean, and it can suck, like if you own your home and your home is
Oh
the
yeah,
place that's giving you the illness, like
it's making you sick. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
rough.
bad. It is.
Yeah. And I get that it's hard, but that I think that's what I really got from talking to JC too and talking to other people that are, really thriving
Mhm.
after finding treatments that are working for them and practitioners, and they're working on multiple things. Like
Yes.
you, they have, I'm not just going to ignore the fact that I have trauma in my back. I'm going to be
Right.
working on all of it because
Right.
it's a very hopeful experience. And I think that's what I love about the CIRS group that y'all put together, because
Yeah.
it's not only informing people, which is huge, helping people. And I think practitioners need to be alerted that this is a thing and this is how, and it's treatable and all of that, but also just to have that support, because
Right.
community is huge when you're facing something that you're like, wait, what is it that I have? And
Yeah. It
what is this
is.
going to cost? And how is this going to work?
Exactly. And it's a lot to wrap your head around. And if you have SIRS, chances are you have that like that
Fog.
inability to process the information. And that was one thing, JC and I did, like we would exchange our blood panel results and stuff. Like, can you tell me what, like, I don't know why, like I was able to read hers, she was able to read mine. There's just something there that we were able to like kind of like put it all together for each other, like
Yeah.
collectively. It was a little bit easier to at least struggle through it together rather than just look at
Right.
these results and go, oh my God, this is a wall of text that I don't feel like processing right now. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
helpful.
That's funny. I was just thinking about that. I don't remember even the context of like how much easier it is to, look at somebody else's stuff, like anything. Um,
Yeah.
I think I was critiquing somebody's yard and I'm like, I can't figure out what to do in my own yard, but I can tell what plants they need in their yard. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just funny how it's hard when it's up in your face and it's your
Yes.
stuff.
Well,
But
and
if,
that's
yeah,
kind of the argument for coaching of some kind, whether it's a therapist or a health coach like you,
or
or
business
like I'm like
coach
a
like
business
you.
coach. Yeah,
Yeah,
like you, it's not that the coach is necessarily some magic guru that
right,
leads you through the thing. It's just the fact
right.
that they're outside and they can point things out to you that's just you're just too close to. So
Yeah.
I totally, I mean, I believe that, and I get coaching and I have therapy for all the same reasons that I provide what I can to others, because I see that there's value there for sure. You need it.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're too on top of it. And I think
Mhm.
having a friend
Yeah.
that, I mean, y'all, that was so helpful to have a friend that's going through it at the same time. But
Yeah.
now to have the group and have community
Yes.
where, and so you run groups and there's tons of
Yeah.
information on the website and Instagram.
Mhm.
Um, but there's also support for people.
Right. Yeah, and we have the monthly group calls, and just generally people can post their questions as they happen. Oh, I'm seeing my doctor tomorrow. What should I ask him? Or I did see my doctor and he said this. What does that mean? Or there's like because there's sometimes you'll hear something, you'll nod, and then you'll go home and go, wait, what? And so it's a good
Right.
chance for, not that we're interpreting data or medical advice in the group, because again, people need their practitioners and we do not take the place of that at all, but it's good to just get that. What I've noticed that the group members are able to benefit from is they hear, oh, Barbara's taking this other medication and it's helping with, her cognition, I'm going to ask my doctor about it. Otherwise, sometimes doctors don't tell you all of your options. They don't necessarily, they aren't or for example, I just started the last step, which is the VIP spray. And by the way, the VIP spray is supposed to do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the GI healing, hopefully.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's what I'm hoping for. But I just started that. So, but I just started the VIP spray, and I didn't know the for the first month that I was taking it, it was at a very low dose. Like my doctor just didn't explain that to me, which is a little annoying. But talking to the group, I realized, oh, most people do kind of gradually go up because you can have some side effects if you go too hard, too fast. So I was able to use that information, talk to my doctor, and he's like, okay, if you want to jump to the full dose, I'll let you. Just let me know if it hurts, basically. And so now this new bottle that I just got is the full dose as a result of collectively talking about it within the group. So yeah.
Yeah. And as a practitioner, I mean, you know this as a coach, like sometimes we have a way of working with people. Yep. And so we don't even think to offer something or, so.
Right.
So sometimes there's that, but sometimes a practitioner may just not know. Like
right.
They may not know about a certain medicine or a certain dose or.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, sometimes I will ask, like, for example, the general shoemaker protocol is actually to eradicate Marcons and do another nose test before you move on to VIP. But my practitioner has seen that most of his clients do not eradicate Marcons, but they're feeling better and he'll move them on to VIP anyway. So when I challenged him, like, hey, everyone I've heard is eradicating Marcons, why aren't I? Or why aren't we checking for me? He was able to kind of explain that. And he's like, my clinical experience is this. I understand the studies and the paperwork says otherwise. But if the person in front of me is telling me I feel better on all these levels and their blood work shows that they're better and ready for that next step, then he's like, why would I hold them back? And every practitioner is going to be different. Some people are sticklers and some people.
But I do love that.
Yeah.
Because I think there has to be room for that.
Yes.
So that's great. And I think sometimes, finding the right practitioners, it's more about a fit than
it really
necessarily. I mean, everybody can have the same information and, be credentialed, but it's going to be who you feel comfortable around and feel like they listen to you.
Yeah, there's a real gut instinct that you have to go with when you're talking to anyone, a therapist, a doctor, a coach. I mean,
absolutely,
a friend, like when you're picking your friends even and deciding to get close to someone, you do kind of need to filter that through how you fell about them to an extent. I agree.
Yeah. So Barbara, how have you been able to have a gut instinct with your GI? How's that working for you?
I mean, I feel like, well, for example, like when I talked to the original conventional GI doctor and when she just refused to even hear after I offered, do you want to hear what I'm eating? Because I think I was paleo at the time. And I thought that was important. I was like, look at me, I'm paleo. I'm so
me
good.
too.
Yeah.
So, I'm paleo. And then
and I'm still having problems.
Issues.
Well, yeah, exactly. So that was part of it. So that, again, you start to kind of, I think when you ask questions like that and you just kind of feel a little bit not heard and not seen, and you're like, you're not being listened to like that. I had and then just like you described, from there, I moved on to a holistic practitioner and I thought, okay, I can trust this woman. She's, she knows more about the holistic, the full picture, which she did. However, I mentioned that I was doing carnivore and she wasn't upset about it, but she just kind of was like, nah, like she was a little bit, there's something there. And again, it didn't feel like she was really listening to me. She was kind of just looking at my data, looking at the test results and like making decisions based off of that, which is fine. Some practitioners are going to do that. But it's funny that I think you had mentioned something about like growing the awareness with practitioners. I actually have been meaning to give her a call because I haven't seen her since like 2020 at this point. I want to call her and be like, hey, I had CIRS. that whole time. Like, just FYI, in case someone shows up with like I just want to make sure she knows about it, because it wasn't even on the radar when I saw her for any of the things that she tested for.
And I've thought about that too, actually. Just shooting in, I don't know if they would even get the email if I, sometimes there's layers to get to people or whatever, or send a note, but to be able to say, just so you know, this is what ended up happening, in case it's helpful for other patients that you have. I've thought about that not actually being that nice in some ways. About by the way, here's a stack of resources for you to educate yourself, because the advice that you're giving people is terrible.
Right.
But but I don't do, I was like, I don't want to do that either.
No, I haven't spent the energy either, but yeah,
I don't want, because but to also just to be like, I want people to understand, even the doctor I see now that I really like him, I'm educating him sometimes on something. I'm like, well, isn't that a diurnal hormone? And so shouldn't you be testing it before? He's like, never heard of that. What are you? And he's a smart guy.
Wow. I'm glad he's receptive, though. It sounds like
kind of
a little bit.
Yeah, kind of, where I'm like, I'm up in there going, who knows about methylene blue? And I'm taking him a book on methylene blue.
That's amazing.
He's open.
That's cool.
But I also think you're right. If practitioners get into, and they really don't have time. I mean, when you look at the way, that is really not a great job for health. Like, they're trying to help all these people, but they're inside all day long. They are, going from patient to patient. They're, when do they have time to read like we are reading about everything? And and you also have to be open. I think you have to be open to learn from your patients or your clients or whoever comes to you. And some people are just not going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just the nature of things. And so if you run across someone who's like that, then maybe start looking elsewhere. It's, you can always just call someone and have a quick 15-minute consultation and just get a feel for the person. But I definitely, I'd say that about jobs. Like I did a job switch, also through this process. I had at the start of this year, around the time I was diagnosed, I had a terrible job that I hated. And I was like, I want to feel fulfilled. I want to coach people. I want to be around people who want to get better, in whatever way. And I think that there's room to look at all the aspects of your life. So whether it's your health and pursuing a treatment like this, or it's your job and you want to just find a better company or find a better boss or better manager, or, just, it sounds, it's simple. It's not easy. I get it, but I think that when you look at all those things add up, in your life and make up how well you're doing. And they're all worth looking at for sure.
Yeah, because I don't think you can underestimate what stress does to the body.
Yeah.
And so whether that stress is old trauma, new trauma, infection, or, something else that's come along, or old stuff that's hanging out, like whatever it is. And if you're living a life that doesn't feel meaningful and is stressful to you, then you are going to, that to me, I don't think there's a way to not be inflamed with that scenario.
I totally agree.
So
it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's a theme of this conversation.
It's all connected. Sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way in your work as a coach, but it can feel a little overwhelming. Like, I can't know everything and so it's like, well, it's okay, because it is all connected. So if you start somewhere like here, it's all gonna, wherever you can start.
Just kind of start pulling one little thread, I guess, and see where it leads. But I agree. It is all connected. And you just start somewhere. You start small, just little tiny changes, whatever you can do. I like to, when building a habit, I like to do a version of it that's impossible to fail. If you want to read more, read one page a night, literally just one page. I was going to say
one sentence.
One sentence. No,
you really
seriously.
cannot fail if you just read one sentence.
And yeah, and that's a lot of habits can be built off of just a very, very small step that you build on it. And as long as you keep building on it and progressing, and keeping it up, I think that real change can definitely happen.
For sure. So what else nourishes your soul? You're giving back a lot, your work and also the CIRS group. So what is really nourishing to you right now?
Well, in one of the type of coaching I do is with some small business owners or entrepreneurs or even entrepreneurs, people who are like got their day job, but they want to do something on the side. And I get to run these group calls with people like that. I have about 5 business calls a week and 1 fitness call. And it's so nice to be around. Like I feel lucky. I get to facilitate the call. I basically call on who's next and help them figure out what 1 or 2 things they want to commit to focusing on for the week ahead. And that's how I run the calls. But just hearing people and they talk about how their last week went and how they did, and then, plan for the next, and to watch their confidence get better, and like they start putting out whatever it is that they're trying to work on. I have one guy, producing podcasts, and he's putting out like 1 every day now, when he was struggling just a couple months ago to even do 1. Just seeing these changes, I mean, man, that gives me life. Like, it sounds so cheesy, but it's like, I love being around people like that. And the fact that I can help people like that, and I'm not even doing much other than listening and letting them kind of work it all out in a group setting, the groups helping each other, offering suggestions because they're getting to know each other too. So that's nourishing for me for sure. And just, outside of that on my own, like I mentioned before, I do a lot of reading. I love reading. I love, I also I love working out. Like I get to walk my 2 dogs every day, things like that. I do weightlifting and sometimes I can get to doing yoga or Pilates, which is good. So yeah, all of that stuff. And of course, carnivore.
Yeah. Yeah. And the carnivore community, you've got a nice little community around you. So that's nice.
Yeah, I've definitely been able. That's another thing that I think I managed to do this year, was kind of really curate the people closest to me in my life and pick out the people. One like prerequisite in my mind for like the people I get close to and my friends is like, I want to be like them in some aspect, not completely, everyone's an individual, but there's something about them that I admire, something about them that I want to grow in towards what they've accomplished. So I've been able to develop those kinds of friendships in this past year, and that's been really great too.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I think you definitely have the best of the carnivore people around you.
Yes, yeah.
From what I can tell, you've got the best of the best.
Yeah.
The supportive, like,
undogmatic.
Yeah.
Not trying to just make a quick buck or whatever. Yeah.
No,
I have the
right. Just genuinely nice people that are just trying to heal themselves and are not dogmatic about it. I love that. And to have people that you feel like, just to have Judy reach out to you like that, of like, I just think that's, how great that life. I guess I'm just struck by how, I don't know what exactly you're doing to make all that happen, but how life is coming to you and showing you the way.
Yeah.
It's literally not that you're not doing the work.
No, I'm right with you with that. Like, I don't know sometimes why I get some of the amazing things that I get in my life, but I'm very, very lucky. And just, I think that also shows like Judy's heart when she sees someone in pain. That's who she is. Like, and that's why she's one of the real ones, one of the few. And that's, I don't know what I'm doing either, but I'm going to try to keep doing it, whatever it is.
Well, you definitely have a magnetic energy about you, and you're taking great care of yourself, and you're not sugarcoating that. Literally, you're not sugar, but you're really not like, I don't know, you're not I don't know. It's just very straightforward. And I think just very pleasant. And so I think that is what's attracting the people to you.
Sure.
But you're also somebody that other people are like, want to be like and want to be around. So,
well,
and I do. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you for
Thank you for
saying that. No,
like have a comment.
no, it's the sweetest thing ever. I thank you. I hope so. I hope that's true.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there's an authenticity to that too. Like you're not, it seems like you're very clear about who you are. And we're all just out here trying to do the best we can.
Yeah, well, I'm glad if I have achieved that now. I'm 36 and my 20s were certainly not this way. So I'm glad that I'm figuring something out, thankfully.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, 36. Yeah. I'm approaching 52 and
I love that because I would think that you were my age if I didn't know that at all. Like, no, there's no way you're in your 50s. It's insane.
Like, it just gets better and better.
Yeah, it really does. I'm not afraid of aging anymore.
No.
Seeing someone like you, first of all, but second of all, like knowing that Carnivore is like kind of a youth fountain of sorts, to a degree. Like just some of the people that I know who have been doing Carnivore for a while, they just have a glow about them. It's just
that's true.
Happens.
Yeah, and also,
and all the other efforts of being healthy.
All the other efforts too. But I think it's truly like an attitude too of the way that the struggles that you have been through and the way you approach life is quite magical because to be where you are now, it's amazing. And to still be healing. I mean, I think that's true. Like you're still on the healing journey. And
no, thank you for acknowledging that and saying so. I think that sometimes I forget how hard things have been. And I don't necessarily realize how good they are, especially if you compare. And so it is important to acknowledge that and celebrate it and be happy with what you have and just to keep going, I guess.
I think it is hard to see, like we were saying, like it's easier for you to look at JC's blood work and see some stuff or see her markers or whatever, because it's when you're in it, it's hard to see. And
exactly that. Yep.
How much you're killing it. Like, like you got this.
Right.
I realize that you still have some bathroom issues, but you're killing this.
One day I'll have it all.
Oh, I know. I can't. Yeah. I wonder about that too. I'm like, and then what would we do?
I know what.
Yeah.
We'll throw a party.
I think, and I was just thinking about this. I know we're out of time, but I was just thinking about this today too. Like it keeps me humble to still have issues and to struggle so that I understand struggle of clients that come to me.
Yes.
Like I know, and when you're like, occasionally a donut, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not doing that, but I get it.
Yeah.
And just to have no judgment there.
Right.
Because this human thing is quite the ride.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And I think that, I mean, I would hope that the reason that we do go through a lot of the hard stuff that we go through is for relating and helping others through similar hard things. So yeah, if that's the reason, cool. Let me help some people then. And let me make that worth it.
And let me get at it. Right.
Yeah.
This is, Whew, yeah. Well, I've just loved talking to you, Barbara. It's so good to get to finally talk to you and get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all the work that you're doing too. It's amazing.
I just love to share stuff with people because so that people don't feel alone in their own journey to try and figure out their own health issues or whatever's going on for them. So,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, cool. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.